Hey guys, my name is Sandy. I'm a licensed realtor here in the Central Florida area. Today I want to do a video on how to know if when a builder offers to pay your closing costs, if it makes sense for you or not. We're in a very high interest rate market. We're in October of 2024. Interest rate has recently come down, but it's still a bit high for some people to purchase. And we have a lot of builders in our area, and some of the incentives that they're giving is offering to either buy down the rate for you or paying your closing costs or both, or also helping you with upgrades. And I do a lot of new construction homes. I sell a lot of new construction homes, and I wanted to dig into when a builder says they're paying your closing costs, what that really means. What kind of inspired this video for me is I was out with clients last week. Actually, I was out the week before with them. We went to a particular builder, I'm not going to call any names, and the builder told us they're going to do 6%, they'll offer 6% towards the buyer's closing costs. And I remember thinking to myself, that's a lot of money, and I'm telling the buyer, I don't think you're going to need 6% to close on your home, but maybe you could use some of that money for upgrades. And they're like, no, you can only use it for your closing costs. So I'm like, okay, that's great. They're VA buyers, meaning they're doing no money down, so that would work. So we were there a week prior, get all these details. We went back last weekend to kind of put the deal together. And at this point in time, you know, the sales guy's doing the paperwork and all that great stuff, and he gave us the worksheet. And when I look at the worksheet, I realized that first of all, they have the buyer put in 10% down, which is a VA loan. And I understand that some builders will want some kind of down payment, which the buyer would get back at closing, right? So this particular builder, even though they were doing a VA loan, they wanted them to put 6% down, which we already discussed. But on the form, they had 10%. So I'm like, why is it 10% on the form? I don't get that. So then he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. So he corrected it. But before he corrected it, he told us that if they aren't putting less than 10% down, they can't get the 6% closing cost incentive that the builder is offering. And I'm like, you knew from the beginning that these were VA buyers. So why would you then be saying this? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, let me fix it. So they fixed it, right? He fixed whatever he wanted to fix. They gave us a second worksheet. On the second worksheet though, it is the way they work out the numbers. The 6% that the builder is offering the buyer is actually going towards paying down the interest rate. So again, I said to him, I'm like, wait a second. Is the builder offering 6% to pay the buyer's closing costs? Or is the builder offering 6% to buy down the interest rate? What are we doing here? He's like, oh no, we're buying down the interest rate. I'm like, what is the interest rate if they were to sign now? Because this is a new construction home. It's not built yet. It's going to take them 6 months to build a home. And I did point out to the buyers, I'm like, there's no way the builder can guarantee you an interest rate when you're not going to be closing until 6 months or more from now. And this is how we got into this conversation. And they were like, no, they guarantee it. So that's why I had to go see for myself. And so I asked them, like, how are you guaranteeing, in the middle of this conversation, how are you guaranteeing the interest rate now when they're not going to be closing until 6 months or less from now, because it's still dirt. The foundation's not even in the ground yet, guys. It's still dirt. So the sales guy said, oh, we're going to guarantee it because we're going to buy it down. And right now we are guaranteeing an interest rate for VA at 4.99. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, hey, that's a great deal. Me and my buyer is all excited and everything. Until he gave us the worksheet, the third worksheet this time, by the way. And the third worksheet did have them put in 6% down. But now they have the interest rate buy down that the builder was offering is exactly 6%. So 6% of that purchase price was $29,000 something. I don't remember the rest of it, but let's say $29,000 for easy maths. So when he gave us a third worksheet, the third worksheet has the builder bind down the interest rate for $29,000 and have the buyer come into the closing table with $16,000. So how is this the builder paying your closing costs? That does not make sense, does it, guys? It does not. So again, I said to him, when we first came, you know these were VA buyers. You know they were doing no money down. You said they had to put 6% down, which is fine. So they expect to get the 6% back at the closing table, being that you're telling us your builder is paying their closing costs up to 6%. Right? I hope I'm not confusing anybody here. So there's two different 6%. One 6% is the builder is saying, I know you're doing a VA loan and it's no money down, but you need to put 6% on contract and you'll get this back at the closing table. So the buyer is going to give them 6% to sign contract. The builder is also saying, we will pay up to 6% of your closing costs which means you should have no closing costs, right? Because 6% is more than enough to cover the closing costs for a new construction property. And the only thing they should come out of pocket with is their prepaids, like they're paying their insurance and their taxes ahead of time, so the bank will escrow that. Because typically at the closing table, you're going to pay a few months in advance based upon when you're closing. So let's say you're closing in July and the taxes will be due in November. The bank is going to have to collect up to July that amount of taxes so that in November they could pay the taxes. So typically at the closing table, you have what is called prepaids, which means you got to pay 1 year's insurance up front, and then the bank is going to start escrowing for the insurance. And based upon when the taxes are due and when you're closing, you're going to have to pay some upfront tax money as part of your closing costs, so that when the taxes are due in that year, the bank would pay it, right? So that's what is called prepaids. So I understand prepaids may not be included, and the builders typically do not pay for your prepaids. They're not going to pay for that. So that's why it's up to 6%. So I'm asking the sales guy, if the builder is paying the closing costs up to 6%, all they should be bringing to the closing table is their prepaid amount, which was like $5,000 or something like that. Instead, you have $16,000. How do we get to $16,000? I don't understand that. Then he starts to explain to me that it's because the 6% the builder is offering is they're actually taking that money to buy down the buyer's interest rate. So I told the buyer, I'm like, don't do it, because the interest rate they're buying down is not even a permanent buy down. It's actually a 2-to-1 buy down. So what that means is the buyer will pay 2% less in the first year of interest rate in the first year of owning the home. In the second year, they pay 1% less, and in the third year, the regular payment starts. The regular interest rate would start. So let's say it was 4.99. In the first year, because they're paying 2% less, it would be 3.99. In the second year, they were paying 2.99. In the second year, they pay 3.99, and in the fourth year, the interest rate will get to 4.99. But that would work. But I don't think that's worth $29,000. So I said to my buyer, I'm like, I don't think that the $29,000 is worth it for you to do a 2-1 buy down and not a permanent buy down. This doesn't make any sense. You're not going to have this buy down permanently on the loan. It's only going to be temporary. First one in the first year, and the second one in the second year. I'm like, so I wouldn't do the buy down. So then I said to the salesperson, I said, by the way, let's say the buyer does not do the buy down. They do not want to do the buy down. Give me a worksheet where they're not doing the buy down at all. They're taking up the builder up on paying their closing costs up to 6%. How does that work? He works it out again, and at this point in time, the buyer was only taking the money for the prepaid. And this got me to doing this video because when you go to a builder, and this particular builder, I don't typically work with this builder. A lot of agents don't work with this particular builder because they try to keep real estate agents out of their development, to be honest with you, based upon their pay structure. So now I see why they do that. And the reason why they're doing that is because they realize if a real estate agent is representing a buyer, they're going to dig deep into all the fine prints and the details that they're giving the buyer. Whereas if the buyer is by themselves, they're not really going to be, we have some very savvy buyers that will check that. But then you have some buyers that will just go with whatever the salesperson is saying and think that they're getting a deal when they're not. This particular builder, they pay real estate agents really low because they don't want us in their business. But because I sold my buyers the home that they're selling to buy this particular home, I was all up in the business because these are buyers that I really have a good relationship with. And at this point in time, they're looking to sell their home that they bought 2 years ago because of their family dynamic changing to buy a new construction home. So that's how I end up with this builder, because typically I would not be working with this builder. And when I went through this with my buyer, I see why they don't want real estate agents working too much with them. So if you go to a builder, I would suggest that you try to have an agent working with you, because we know the ins and outs, especially an agent that specializes in new construction homes. That's number one. Number two, if the builder is offering to pay your closing costs, and some builders give fantastic deals, don't get me wrong. There are builders out there that gives very fantastic deal, especially in this market. They will actually pay your closing costs and also help you to buy down your interest rate. This particular builder that we're talking about, they weren't trying to do that. They were disguising it as, yeah, we're going to pay your closing costs up to 6%, and you not knowing that that entire 6% is going towards the interest rate buy down that they're offering you or guaranteeing you, which means you're really, at the end of the day, you're going to have to still pay your own closing costs. Because the interest rate buy down is separate from closing costs. It's two different things. Typically, you wouldn't have an interest rate buy down, right? Typically, you just go close on whatever the interest rate is the interest rate, and then you have all the closing costs. So guys, if you're going to go buy a new construction home now and the builder is giving you incentives, Make sure you understand what these incentives are. Make sure they give you a worksheet, either the builder or the builder's lender give you a worksheet as exactly what that looks like. If you're offering to pay 3% of my closing costs, how much does that represent? And does that represent any part of me buying my interest rate down? Okay, I hope this helps. I don't want to make this video too long. You can always call or text me. My number should be somewhere above or somewhere below this video. And I will see you on the next video. Bye now.